welcome to another Mobile Monday event in Silicon Valley. Tonight we have the future of the connected home. So in the Twitter sphere, hashtag Mobile Monday, hashtag connected home for tonight. You guys can reference that. So a little bit about me. I'm Mario Tapia. I am your host for tonight. I'm also president of Mobile Monday, and I've been putting events like this together since 1989, so 15 years. Which also, by the way, Mobile Monday is 10 years old in October and November this month, this year. So agenda, well, I have a quick kind of follow through what is Mobile Monday, talk a little about our accelerator program, Momentum. We'll have Salesforce Europe, not to be confused with Salesforce Europe, but Salesforce Europe, and then a small message from them. And then we have good news. Actually, Caroline, who was supposed to keynote tonight, just went into labor this morning. So yay! So yes, so she won't be here tonight. But we tried to get her on a hangout, but that didn't quite work. And so a little bit about Mobile Monday. We're a nonprofit, lots of cities in the U.S., lots of cities around the world. We are not just a developer meetup, we are the ecosystem, right? So we have business development, sales, we have some venture, we have product and marketing folks, we have developers, media, designers. So how many people are BD sales, right? All right, these are the talkers, all right? Product marketing, come on, high pipers, the organizers, all right? And then developers, the people actually really get stuff done. All right, cool. And then the creative designers, all right. Cool. And then media. Anybody? Any bloggers? Are you guys actually going to cover tonight? Come on. We have a lot of free media tickets, but I don't see a lot of blogs going on. And then all right, yeah. Did I cover venture guys? All right. Cool. Cool. So a little bit about the events that we do. So this is our typical monthly meetup, topical panel discussion. We also, if we ever do a demo night, that means we were lazy, didn't plan anything. So it takes a lot of effort to do a panel discussion. So demo night, like, just demo. And then Mobile Monday Labs, that is more, okay, if you have an SDK or API, okay, who has an SDK or API that they want to pimp out to developers? Right? Okay, the developer lab is for that. So it's an audience, we could range from 25 to 150 different types of developers. Depends on how sexy your API is. It just happens to be that way. But if you're in wearables, then yeah, you'll have a packed house. But then if you're doing something to, analytics or whatever, then it's a little boring. All right, sorry. Although analytics is a necessary evil. And then we do the CXO dinners. So we actually have a CXO dinner at the end of the month tied in with this month's topic on connected home. So these are all founders of connected home type of devices and folks from the ecosystem. We have a couple of spots left. So if you're interested, hit me up. If you're a founder, executive, and play in the connected home space, we'd love to have you. So we have basically 25 people at a round table. And basically what's discussed in there stays in there, but we really kind of see about what's happening in the ecosystem and share ideas and thoughts, which are your own and not the company that you represent. I did a lot of work on mobilemonday.us, so you should check out our website. It's one of those new fancy one-pager. Okay, who likes the whole one-page design? Have you guys seen the new websites? How do you like people with the tab design? Tab design, is that better? Yeah, I think the one page is way cooler. Okay, so check out mobilemonday.us. You'll see my attempt at core webmastering. You find us on Meetup. You can also find us on Twitter at MomoSB, on Facebook. So if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, how many people bought a ticket tonight? Okay, you don't have to pay for tickets. If you follow us on Twitter and Facebook, we always send out a code for free tickets. So follow us there. That's your reward for following us. And then on YouTube, in case you want to do a recap, or you had to leave early or missed it, we have over 60 events just like this, all on YouTube, backed up at Mobile Monday SV. So that out. But also I'd like to thank, so this, it takes a village to put this stuff together. So we have, where's Ryan? Ryan's out here somewhere running around. Ryan's right in the back, of course he's up by the bar. So Ryan is my right-hand man on this. He's our CFO. We have Monica, our events manager. She actually, all the treats, like all the cool, do you guys, how many people tried out the snacks? These are all food startups. Wasn't that cool, the chocolate? Give those guys a hand. BBF, those are awesome. So they're really cool. And then we also have, Chelsea's not here, she's in Vegas. Stephanie's here. Where's Steph? Stephanie, redhead. She's over there back. So she'll be tweeting tonight, and she'll be mentioning and taking photos. And then John Lynn is on camera. So I'd like to say thank you to our event sponsors. We have Arcsoft, Adobe, and PubNub. Give them a round of applause for helping us that event. And then, okay, how many people didn't know there was beer here? Okay, so yeah, what? Yeah, so the Belgian beers are back here at the bar, and then to give those guys a round of applause. And then definitely check out BBF on your way out, and so here is kind of the panel for tonight. I'm connected home. I have a couple of slides here to talk about the Restart Accelerator program, so I'll go through this real quick. How many people knew about Momentum already? So, mobile focused accelerator program that we put together. Applications close on May 30th. The next batch starts July 9th, and we do 3 months. So your typical accelerator program, 12 weeks. But a little bit of difference is that we focus on not really about the funding, but we focus on deals and enrichment. So we give you some classwork, coursework, and workshops. We have an awesome group of mentors that help you. They use basically people from all Fortune 500. And I think this is kind of the model that's making things work. It's a little different than a lot of the other accelerator programs, is because we bring in Fortune 500 to the table. And so we look for startups that look further along in the product development cycle to be something that's a little bit more mature. And then we give you a lot of exposure. We get you on stage, we get you in conferences, etc. And there's tons of free perks. I think like over $500,000 in perks right now in the kitty for the different startups. So these are some of the workshops that we focus on. They're more deals and negotiation focused, as opposed to boring lead startup, how to be your first hire, etc. How to do a pitch deck. So this is way different, more exciting. It also helps you hone out your business skills in growing the business. We did 14 companies last year. 10, I think, right next month, 10 will have been invested in, which I don't think any other accelerator can really match that, except in August first year. So this is our first year, basically, of startups. And I think we're kicking some ass. So we did 2 classes, 14 startups. We're over 18 million in total funding. That will bump up to 2 million here pretty soon. And so, yeah, so we have some really good stats. I don't know if we're just beginner's luck, or is it the program that actually is helping these companies out. So these are some of the principal investors that we had from our pool. And then I think this is probably what's key with the program, is that we bring brands into the equation. And so this was basically bringing Fortune 500 to do deals, distribution, etc. And then our mentor network is basically the community, you guys from the Valley, but you guys also represent a lot of these companies. And we've teamed up with Women in Wireless, Girls in Tech, App Nation, and also Digital Garage to host us in their new offices on Market Street. So what do we look for? Awesome team, mobile focused, having a live product, no ideas. I see a lot of, I have an idea, here's my PowerPoint, no big work, it's got to be live. And we look for traction. And then we look for angel and seed funding in a previous. So if you're a Y Combinator 500 startups accelerator program graduate, perfect. You almost meet all the qualifications that we're looking for. So check out momentum.vc. Then next I have Rick from Salesforce Europe.
Great, thank you very much. So my name is Rick Rizzoli. I'm the founder and CEO of Salesforce Europe. We're a European technology sales agency. Since 2003, we've helped about 100 technology companies expand into Europe. So expanding into Europe, you have a number of options. You can fly back and forth from San Francisco. You can hire a specialized sales agency such as ours, or you can do more of a traditional approach of opening up offices and hiring full-time people. That has some drawbacks, high costs in money and high costs in time to get it going. Long time to actually start selling. By the time you say, listen, we're going to start, we're going to start looking for recruiters. It's typically a year before you're actually engaged in the market and selling. And high risks, if things don't go well, it costs about $1 million to open up an office a month and hire people. It costs about $1 million to close that office down. So we offer a more flexible approach to that. So what we offer is highly skilled, qualified account directors and country managers for our clients that sell in the name of our clients on a part-time or a full-time basis. And so we try to understand what the sales objectives and the sales strategies of our clients. We present them to people on our team, they interview them. If there's a right fit, we kick off the project and we sell the name of our clients. So Salesforce Europe is in this. Where do our clients come from? Half of them are from the US, half of them are from Europe. Even the Europeans, if you have a startup in France or Finland, in the UK, and you want to sell in the country next door, you need somebody local. It's really hard to do it to fly people in and out. You have language issues, you have contact issues, you have influence issues, and so there's value not only for Silicon Valley companies, but also for European companies. We have access to over 1,000 large enterprises that we're selling into. We have a sales target for our portfolio of accounts today of over $40 million. We're currently selling into over 300 distributors, over 50 telecom operators, and have thousands of contacts into our database. The benefits we offer are cost savings, SG&A at 20% are under. Speed, if we start today, we could have a team up and running in about 4 weeks selling for you in a target country. Low risk, you can ramp up a team, you can wind down a team, you can move to a new market, a particular country, a particular vertical isn't working for you. No delays. Experienced people, country managers, VP of sales of large companies, and really clear objectives. These are the clients we're working with today. A couple of Silicon Valley companies you'll see, like Wi-Fi, Ring Central, Streamline, like Livefire. We are their international team. If you go to their website and look at their London office launch, that's us. Their Brazil office launch, that's us. Their Australia office launch, that's us. And our sales guys are outselling some of their full-time people. So why are we here today? We're looking for companies in the growth stage, kind of B round and funding, kind of 2 to 20 million in existing revenue today, and now looking to expand to the next step. Also looking for stock with VCs that are looking to add value to their clients. And that's it. Thank you very much.
So they also have tables in the back. So also let's say thanks to PubNub, we have Monaka and a couple other startups at the tables down this way. So please say hi on your way out. So if we're not going to have a keynote, I'll kind of just frame up why the topic tonight and why it's important to us in the mobile ecosystem. So we looked at feature connected home, and last year we kind of did a connected home type of discussion, and we just started to look at some of the gadgets that were consumer facing. But now we're looking at as more and more devices are getting connected, what are those challenges on the software side? So how many people are interested in the software business, right? Side of things. How many people do hardware? See, yeah, you just started. And so if you didn't know, Silicon Valley got its name from making hardware. And it's a renaissance that's coming back, and it's like, see, yeah, the other guys with gray hair, we kind of remember that. So if you're looking for embedded engineers, yeah, they're gonna be either just a graduate from Berkeley or a little bit of gray hair. So, but we'll look at some of the challenges that we have on the software side and hardware side. So we have good balance on the panel for that. But also security, but not security in the sense of not securing my home, but really security of these devices and how they're connected and who's in the hackability of these devices. We'll also look at interoperability. And there's different types of religions, right? Some people say things should stand alone. My speaker should be able to talk to my refrigerator. I don't understand the use cases between that, but we'll have some type of interesting discussion around that. I'd like to introduce Ileana. Yeah, okay. So Ileana will be our moderator for tonight. She's also a founder and chief editor for Uber Gizmo, and she'll introduce some panels. Thank you. Give Ileana a round of applause, please.
Okay, so the Internet of Things was a term created in 1999 by Kevin Ashton at the MIT, and today Cisco estimates that over 50 billion objects will be connected to the Internet by 2020. So today we are here to discuss the future of the Internet, and I'd like to welcome our panelists here. Please come. So, hello. Okay, so here we have Brian Kennedy, VP Strategic Development at Electric Imp, Rob Collier, Managing Partner at Shasta Venture, Bhagat Nenani, VP Engineering at PubNub, Mike Stoffer, Senior Director of Business Development at Qualcomm, and Cameron Robertson, founder of Lokitron. So I let them introduce themselves and what they do at their company.
Okay, can everybody hear me? That seems to work. So I'm Brian Kennedy with Electric Imp. Electric Imp was founded about 2.5 years ago by Hugo Fines. Hugo originally headed hardware development for the original iPhone development and headed up hardware development through the iPhone 4. Worked with the guys at Nest for a while, helped them get their first product off the platform. And while he was there, he saw an opportunity to make a horizontal connectivity platform for the Internet of Things. So we have a complete horizontal end-to-end connectivity platform that's for people who are good at making things and don't want to learn everything they need to know about networking and security and silicon and so forth. Very easy solution. You basically plug your thing in and go.
I don't think I've ever used this type of microphone this way before, so anyways, it's the first. I'm Rob Kinder. I'm founder and managing director at Shasta Ventures. We're an early stage venture capital firm. I think the reason they invited me onto this panel is because I've been an active investor in the Internet of Things for quite some time. Have developed a pretty strong opinion about where it's headed. And in fact, if you are bored and you decide to look at your smartphone, you can take a look at, coincidentally, my post from yesterday on 280 VC about where I think the Internet of Things is headed. I was an early investor in Nest Labs, served on the board at one point, was in the Series A. There are 10 people working out of the garage, and we've been investing in the Internet of Things for a while, on the security side with Okana and some other companies around kind of frameworks and products in the Internet of Things. So it's an area we continue to like and continue to invest in.
Hi, I'm Bhagat Nenani, and I manage product development at PubNub. So PubNub is a globally distributed real-time network that provides sort of e-services for building and connecting embedded devices. Some of the services we provide are things like multi-subscribe messaging, data streams, presence, storage, analytics. In the home automation space, we work with companies such as Revolve, we work with companies such as Qualcomm, Insteon, and Vivint. We are sort of like a CDN for connecting devices and users by provide bi-directional connectivity in real time. So you connect your closest data center and you get messages in real time. Currently, we process around 1 billion messages a second, delivering to around 200 billion devices a month.
I'm Mike Stoffer. I head up business development at Qualcomm for Internet of Everything, as applies to the connected home. Qualcomm being a large company, we focus on IoT across focus here in the Valley is primarily connected home. Prior to heading that, I started our business in carrier gateways and then our business in connected CT devices like TVs. So now we're trying to get all those other devices in the home that don't have Wi-Fi in them. Does anyone not know Qualcomm? So the San Jose operation here is the Zeros operation that was acquired 3 years ago. So we focus on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, NFC, all the piping other than cellular modems.
Found my here. I'm Cameron Robertson. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of a company called Apogee, and we made a product called Lockatron. Lockatron is an internet-connected and Bluetooth Low Energy connected device that goes over your door lock and lets you lock and unlock it using your smartphone. We've actually been working in the space for a while. Our first connected device, or attempted connected device, was a connected smoke detector in 2009. And we sort of demoed that and didn't think that was too interesting, so we decided to do something much more high touch, and we went towards access and door locks. We announced the product at the end of 2012 and did a crowdfunding campaign. It's taken us a very, very, very long time to get it manufactured. So the past year is really, my background has been in depth on the manufacturing side, but we've had a number of years of perspective on connected devices, and we certainly have a few opinions on them too. So I'll let Eliane take it.
Okay, so what is the current state of penetration and momentum of the connected application in the home? So I will let Brian start this.
So we probably have a pretty unusually broad perspective on what's going on in the connected home. Because we're a connectivity platform, we've had a lot of companies come to us, or companies we work with, who are in fact using our platform to build connected home products. So this graphic you see behind us here represents quite a few applications in the connected home. Everything you see in green on that chart is something where we already have a design win today, and the product is either about to ship now or will ship in the next quarter or two. Actually, Lockatron is also one of the companies using our platform as well. So I think the good news is there are a lot of products coming to market. However, the reality is, historically there were some Zigbee and Z-Wave products out there that got moderate traction. So it's still fairly spotty. Our friends here at Nest Labs probably represents the most successful connected home product today, but they're probably in a category by themselves so far. But from where we sit, there really is a virtual tsunami of products that are going to start hitting the market this year, and very, very impressive ease of use. For the most part, some of them are a little wacky, but for the most part, most of them are very pragmatic, very useful applications. And the cost and the price points are coming down now where it's starting to make a lot of sense. So I guess our perspective is it's a bit spotty what the take-up has been so far, but we expect to see in the next 12 to 18 months pretty dramatic progress.
Well, I think it's already out there in a pretty massive way. How many people in this room have used Sonos? Maybe it's small, but nice and high so we can see them. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big number of people. So if you think about a device that's out there today that doesn't work without a smartphone, and it's connected to, if you're willing to pay the subscription fees, you can connect it to 5 to 10 kind of web services for content. I think that's another vision of where it's headed, and something else that's out there entering the mainstream. I think you're going to see a lot more products like that in individual silos.
I would say from the company side, I think, when we first started talking to investors back in 2010, you'd be virtually laughed out if you talked anything about hardware. And since then, the perception of it has just changed radically in terms of people are seeing traction, and they're seeing interest in devices. And, crowdfunding has, quite frankly, played a huge role in demonstrating the consumer demand for this space. So are these devices solving really hard challenges in everyone's homes yet? Maybe not. But I think they're about to, and I agree with Brian's assessment that it's sort of next 12 to 18 months here. You're going to see sort of a sea change in terms of devices that were offline people will just buy the online variant because it's price competitive and it adds so much more utility.
So I think we're poised for a lot of growth in this area because the infrastructure is really in place to allow all this new experimentation of connected devices and smoke detectors. If you look at the U.S., for example, it's about 80% of households have broadband access, and almost 100% of those have some kind of a home network.
Yes, back there.
Oh, sorry. So I was saying that in the U.S., there's about 80% of households have broadband access, and of those, the large majority have a home network already, a Wi-Fi network or Wi-Fi PLC. So the infrastructure is there for all these new devices to be introduced into the home without a lot of building out a whole home network. People put these in for to get internet access anywhere in the home with their laptops. They're getting more and more connected media devices. This year, I think the number is about 40% of all TV shows will have connectivity. And you have things like Roku and Amazon Fire and Apple TV. So there's a lot of devices out there that people connected in their homes, and they've built out their networks to support them. So I think you're gonna see it's easy to bring in all these new devices that are going to.
Okay, so what are the current challenges you are facing in making the connected home a reality, specifically in ensuring a reliable connectivity? Maybe Bhagat, do you want to answer this question first?
Sure. So I think there are a couple of challenges there. One is there's the different wireless protocols. I mean, we touched upon the Zigbee, Z-Wave, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I think there's some convergence still pending there. There are trade-offs between whether you want range versus power consumption. Some of these protocols consume a lot of power, but they have higher range. Some of them are low power, but they don't have limited connectivity. But I think the big difference between the connected home of like 5 years ago versus the connected home now is that the connectivity is expanding actually beyond the home. I mean, people are not just interested in controlling devices when they are inside the house. They want to be able to be connected when they are outside. And so the connectivity has to expand from your home to the cloud provider to the user on their mobile device where they are miles away, right? So it's the connected home is essentially expanding, and that connectivity has to be bidirectional. So you have to get signals from your device. You should be able to control the device remotely, and so that's I think a big difference. And as you expand the network, there has to be standard protocols within the home, standard ways of communicating from within to your devices outside, and provide bidirectional real-time access so that it appears as if it's sort of seamless.
Brian, you want to?
Yes, so what our focus is, again, we have a complete end-to-end connectivity platform for the connected home. When you sit down and try to do this, you've got to select the right radios, you've got to select the right processors, you've got to select the right protocol, you've got to build security, you've got to build updating. That's an awful lot of work. The companies we tend to work with are really good at what they do. So Lockatron is really good at building locks. Washing machine companies are really good at building washing machines. And to really broadly penetrate the connected home, you want to have great products, but you also need to have everything related to great connectivity. There's a lot of companies today are setting up web services, for example, but the challenge is getting the products actually out in the field connected. That last mile problem with those devices, that's the problem that we're squarely aimed at, and we think that that's going to make a big difference in being a much quicker on-ramp to getting more and more things connected. So we think there is a host of challenges there, and you don't really fully appreciate how difficult those challenges are to tackle it. We've had a team of over 35 engineers working 2.5 years to build this platform, and we can amortize that cost across thousands of companies. If you have to take all of those challenges on yourself and build it, it's very, very challenging.
So I think the connectivity piece is getting pretty solid. I think one of the big challenges is there's a lot of experimentation around what's the user experience for these new devices. Why would I buy a connected device? And why would I connect my dishwasher to the internet, for example? So I think there's a lot of experimenting that's being going on to validate and discover what those user experiences are and consumers are willing to pay us for. There's also the side of the equipment supplier where they can provide various services with the device where they can get annuity from the customer. That's attractive to them. We have customers, for example, one appliance manufacturer is ready to, if we get Wi-Fi to the right price point, they'll put it in every appliance they make. Because they have, it's not so much what the consumer wants, it's they have all these services planned to monetize those installed devices. So I think those are the challenges, to figure out exactly what the value is of a lot of these systems. We believe there is a lot of value there, but I think it's the consumer.
So, coming back to the connectivity, so Cameron, maybe you want to answer that first. What are the benefits of and the disadvantages of Bluetooth versus Wi-Fi or Zigbee and Z-Wave? Can you explain to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I guess the high level overview, who knows what Zigbee is versus say Bluetooth? Yeah, so I mean like the quick kind of perspective on this is that you have all these protocols to choose from. So you're digging into the technical side of it. You say, I want to build a connected device. And you have things like Wi-Fi, which are fantastic because they're straightforward. They connect you directly to the internet, but they're incredibly power consuming. And then you have things like Bluetooth Low Energy, which is a new emerging player, which is interesting to connect to your smartphone directly, but doesn't necessarily get you back to the web. And then you have things like Zigbee and Z-Wave, which connect you to a hub, which in turn connects you to the web. But you know, we looked at this stuff for a long time. Our first generation product was an Ethernet connected little base station, which then talked over a proprietary low power wireless to the lock itself. And we found that, you know, the idea behind Zigbee and Z-Wave made a lot of sense, these low power protocols to a hub. But the problem was you had to shoehorn your application into the standard of the protocol. So with Lockatron, the protocol made a lot of assumptions that said, well, you want to lock and unlock a door, that's all you want to do, so we let you do that. But we said, no, we have this Bluetooth piece, we transmit information about if someone knocks at the door, we have a whole bunch of other information that we want to send back up, and Zigbee and Z-Wave were just far too constrained to let us do that. And so we decided to opt for Wi-Fi, which we can't keep on very often because it's very, very battery consuming. And then Bluetooth Low Energy, that lets us connect directly between someone's smartphone or wearable and Lockatron. And you know, I think going forward, Bluetooth Low Energy has made a lot of strides in this space. It's really cool to see it as a back-end connection because now you'll be able to route packets up through Bluetooth Low Energy, say through a person's smartphone. So I can walk up to my door and my smartphone will download a bunch of data to the door and then I walk away and it's offline. But in the case of our product, we've seen that people still want some information from that product when they're away from home. They want to have some level of control, even if it's at a time interval. And so we built Wi-Fi directly in the product using electric imp solution. And I think, you know, speaking to the previous question in terms of challenges, our main ask there is give us a low power IP pipe directly to the internet without sort of these restrictions and headaches of Z-Wave and Zigbee. And Wi-Fi is great today for that, but if we could, you know, lower the power consumption, that'd be incredibly helpful.
Anyone want to add anything about the different protocols?
Yeah, so the different PHYs that we mentioned here certainly have different characteristics and different applications. And BLE is one of those that has really low power and a lot of embarrassment characteristics going forward. We think that will be one of the key technologies in wearables going forward, just because of its low power and some of its other characteristics. And you can get to the wearables, you know, everybody's going to have their smartphone, so you can go through your smartphone, Bluetooth from your wearable to your smartphone and then to the internet. Wi-Fi certainly has its place for higher throughput kinds of operation. We do low power Wi-Fi now, but it's not quite as low as BLE, but it's pretty low. And there's a new technology that will emerge in the next couple of years called 11AH, which is really will be fairly competitive with BLE. Will have better distance characteristics and similar power profiles. Zigbee and Z-Wave probably will be, Zigbee's got a lot of traction, probably won't be there for a long time, but we kind of think of things in terms of what's going to be in smartphones going forward, and that's going to be BLE, Wi-Fi, and 11A. I don't think you'll see Zigbee in smartphones. So the volumes that generates will drive these technologies as low as you can get them. So I think that'll be another important factor, getting the price down.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think BLE and Wi-Fi are the dominant ones. I mean, the issue with Z-Wave is it's proprietary. You have to get designs completely from, like license from Sigma Designs. Zigbee also has a lot of interop issues because it's been out there for a long time. It's as long as you stay within a certain profiles, it works fine. But as you go across profiles, there are a lot of interop issues, and that's one of the reasons I think Homologous has not picked up, because these two are very proprietary protocols. And I think some low energy form Bluetooth combined with Wi-Fi, this is probably going to be the future.
Well, I think the main thing I was going to say is it's going to be actually all these things. It's these devices. If you're thinking about what to do, and you're thinking about a device, build them all in. Build in Bluetooth, build in Zigbee, and build in Wi-Fi. And it's really that simple, because it's about the software you're going to put in, because BLE is a really, really big deal when you think about the Internet of Things and the connected home and all these things you want to have, because I think the biggest thing holding back the connected home right now is the people that are making the devices, whether you think of Breville, whether you think of Honeywell, whether you think of anybody that's building these appliances. They finally have a world where everybody has this reconfigurable computing device that they carry around with them in the house. So there's no reason that when you use a toaster, the coffee maker, the refrigerator, that when you go to adjust those controls, that you should touch a physical control like a microphone anymore. But in all seriousness, you go up to the refrigerator, you're turning those dials, you're like, wait, if I turn up the freezer a little bit, do I have to turn the refrigeration compartment down? It should just be an app. And it should just be an app that's on your phone. And when people talk about the internet-connected refrigerator, it should really be the smartphone-connected refrigerator. And when people think about what's the value of the coffee maker, the value is not really the coffee maker having the coffee ready for you in the morning. It's actually more about knowing when you need to reorder filters, or when you need more beans, or when you need things to put into it. So if I have Bluetooth built into that device, and I even use that device just once with my smartphone to do certain things, maybe something relatively complicated, that device doesn't need to phone home all the time. You can phone home once a week, once every couple weeks. That manufacturer is going to be very interested in usage statistics about how often was it used, what kinds of beans went through it, when does it start to fail. You look at refrigerators, you look at toasters, all these things. It's actually manufacturers who are going to be interested in that data, and then using that for replenishment information more than it's going to be about when does it actually start itself, or do I get to see a picture of my kid on the front of the refrigerator.
Yep, I would agree with Rob and add a slight nuanced modification to that. Depending on the use case, and everything here we're talking about is very use case specific, so you have to look at each and every use case to decide what's best. But we're seeing more and more the pattern of a hybrid architecture, and increasingly Bluetooth, because it is low cost, low power, low energy. It does connect up to your smartphone, which is nice. However, that leaves two big gaps. One is, especially in today's world, security is a cat and mouse game. If you're starting out with what you think to be a secure application, almost for sure, pretty soon somebody's going to figure out how to hack that application. If you're relying on the end user to push an update to your Bluetooth device, you're going to learn what everybody in the desktop business learned, and that is you get a 30 or 40% compliance with users doing their own updates. So if you want to force an update down to your end device, for example, the architecture like Lockatron does, you're going to want to be able to, from the management console, force an update down there. So that's an argument to be connected up some way, somehow to the cloud, and Wi-Fi is often the best way to do that. Secondly, if your smartphone is being used right next to the device, Bluetooth is great, but if you have applications where the user wants to monitor the device from afar, do geofencing, maybe you want to turn the air conditioning on and off, when you're getting off the freeway, expressway, or you want to monitor what's going on with your stove if you're out of the house, then popping up through the internet and coming back down to the smart app on your phone makes a lot of sense. So we would advise you looking at hybrid architectures and deciding what combinations of things, but we think 70, 80, 90% of the time, you're going to want a cloud connection somewhere in that architecture.
Okay, so this will be the fun question because people don't agree on that, but so once people will have 20 or more connected devices in their home, one of the major challenges will be the interoperability. So what are the challenges of silos versus an integrated user experience in the home? So who wants to start?
We had this discussion ahead of time, and I actually think that when people say the connected home, I actually think consumers think in terms of silos. I don't think people think that much about, when I open the door, I'd like the music to be on. They actually, when you go in, there's typical user behavior, but people think about very specific silos and what they're doing. And I think it's far more interesting, the startups that are trying to solve one specific problem, whether it's music in the home, whether it's comfort, whether it's safety, security, whether it's cooking, whether it's each of these things. I don't know that my coffee maker really needs to talk to my thermostat. Now, maybe my smoke detector talking to my thermostat is interesting if it detects carbon monoxide and it says, okay, I need to actually turn off the furnace to save lives. That's kind of interesting. But when you go through and you take a look at the use cases that are out there aren't really that many compelling use cases that you don't already handle with the smartphone itself as the convergence device. The idea of setting up automatic behavior, if this, then that, based on device behavior in the house, I think is actually a small and limited subset. And for the cases where you do want to have it, the cloud is the perfect convergence layer to have for that. So there's no reason that those devices shouldn't go up and talk to the cloud anyways. Think about how frustrated you get in your house already if the internet goes out. You don't have Netflix. You probably aren't able to use your Sonos device. Anything that you have is connected to the web. You don't get email, you don't get Facebook. It's becoming more and more reliable. So I'm actually a believer in silos in the home.
I think there are two parts, right? There is the devices itself and how whether they are siloed or not. But I think the main thing is as you extend these devices across outside the home, at the application level, you need common sort of APIs so that anyone writing applications for these devices, they have a common signaling mechanism. Like if you want to turn things off, the application developer shouldn't have to write different programs for each of the devices. There should be one common way where the cloud application is communicating to 5 devices and they can subscribe to certain keywords or messages and then take action. Each of the devices itself may not talk to others, but I think when it comes to the cloud, they have to sort of converge and have a common mechanism so that you can control security in one place, you can do signaling in a common place, you can detect either offline and online in one way, you can share streams of data with other people outside for different business models in a common way. That's where convergence really helps the cloud thing. I mean, the devices themselves may not necessarily talk to each other.
I think that conveying the idea of connected devices is already so difficult, and telling that story to consumers is so hard that you have to narrow down what you have to a single story. And to talk about the idea of 20 devices all talking to each other is really putting the cart before the horse here. We love the idea of other people talking to Lockatron. We have an open API. We encourage that type of development. But realistically, most of the interesting stuff we're seeing there is integrating Lockatron into different use cases, not having Lockatron necessarily talk directly with other devices. And I think there's a ton of arguments to be made of, the incremental utility you get for that. But the question is got to be, I'm paying $150, $200 for this device. am I really going to go out and buy another $200 device because the two of them talking together is so great, so much better than this one device? And so again, you have to convince consumers of that. And being on the front line, let me tell you, it's hard to convince anyone to buy anything. So keep it simple, keep the story simple. That's it.
Yes, I partially agree, partially disagree. I think in the early stages of this market, you need silos because you need complete solutions. I mean, a Wi-Fi chip or a refrigerator with Wi-Fi doesn't do you any good unless you have the whole ecosystem built out, including all the way up to the cloud service. But we also think that as things go forward, consumers will enjoy having interoperability amongst all these devices. Because when you go out and you buy, you don't go outfit your home with all the devices at once and buy them all from one manufacturer. I might go buy a Samsung dishwasher and an LG TV and a dishwasher and if they can at some point interoperate, assuming there's a good value proposition there, then you have an issue. So Qualcomm invested in this technology called Alljoint. We formed an industry alliance to promote this, and we've got 50 members right now, fairly big guys, some of them. And the purpose of that is to make it easy to have devices interoperate at the application level. The idea being that it really creates a platform that allows for a lot of creativity, much like the App Store on smartphones. So it's kind of the App Store concept. We think that we can't sit here and even a silo company can't sit there and think of everything that a consumer might want to do. The example that one of my colleagues likes to use is when Apple invented the iPhone, when they were designing that, they never expected that someone would turn it into a flute. So there's really a lot of creativity out there to be harvested. We want to create a platform to see where that goes, because none of us can really predict where it's going to go.
And I would just add to that I would agree, in the next 5 years, having integration really doesn't matter. Just getting, as Cameron said, just getting a great product out there that really works, and people aren't going to mind having 3 or 4 or 5 apps. So in the short term, I don't think it's a problem, and I would encourage people to go with the silo. In the longer term, however, over the 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I actually have 5 remote controls sitting on my coffee table in my living room, including some of the very expensive remote controls that are supposed to interop with everything, and they do a lousy job on some of the devices and good on the other. And I can't tell you how many times I want to throw all those remote controls at the wall. And now imagine 20, 25 connected devices in your house. And there are some devices where the use case will be more compelling to work together. So for example, when I walk in the door and my Lockatron knows it's me coming in the door, I want my lights to come on, I want the heat to go up. When I go out, I want it to go down. If I'm with the kids and I always go down to the rec room in the basement, I want the lights to go on and the stereo to go on down there, etc. So there are indeed certain of those use cases where interop is compelling, and there's a lot of the use cases where the interop is not so compelling. But I think when you have a home full of 20 connected devices, it's going to start to be compelling to have a lot of those interop and a common point of control. And I think that's another argument for the cloud version here. If everything you have can reach up to the cloud, for example, through our platform, and you have an open RESTful API up there where everything is an HTTP put or a GET, it makes it incredibly simple to make these things interoperate. And now you're really just dealing with a business decision. Do I want to make it interoperate because I can do that in a matter of hours, or do I not care? So that's just another argument for having a termination for your product up in the cloud.
So how are we limited in terms of the technology needed to make the connected home a reality? And what are the areas that need the most development?
I don't really think we are limited in terms of technology. I think we have too much technology. What we really need is some sort of creativity. Lockatron is an example, nice example, very simple device, make it really simple to install. I mean, there are obviously some things like security and something that need to be solved, but overall we have lots of technology. I think for the next 5 years, it's all about making it simple, making it consumable for the average user, so that they don't have to set up like networks and firewalls, open up ports and firewalls and things like that. It should just be as easy to set up, as like we do devices and other things. So I think that's, for the next 5 years, I think we have more technology.
Yeah, one of the biggest thing in connected devices, so our team, we have people who were involved in Roku and Nest and a bunch of other connected device companies. And one of the biggest things in connected devices in the home is return rates. Return rates can be up to 20% on a lot of these devices. Most of that is about the consumer could never get it connected up to the internet in the first place. And getting in those, 25-digit passwords and the SSID and all of that can be a real nightmare. We have a really incredibly interesting technology where our endpoint device module has a photo transistor on it, and we have an API kit. So in order to provision one of our devices when it goes out there, you literally take your smartphone, iOS or Android smartphone, you just key in the password into the app, you hold up the screen of the phone to the device, we blink the screen and use that as a medium to send digital data, which then goes in and provisions the device and actually brings a two-factor security certificate down to the device and completely provisions it reliably in about 10 seconds. GE just shipped a window air conditioner with our device in it about a month ago. If you look for the reviews on that, I apologize, they used a really bad loud air conditioner, so everybody's screaming bloody murder about how loud it is. But there's 180 or some reviews, I think, last time we looked in there, and there was 1 or 2 of people who had some trouble connecting it up. So we think we've actually cracked the code on what it takes to get that connected. And again, that's been the single largest objection for consumer connected devices.
Okay, on the topic of friction, so the connected hardware now is mostly for early adopters, so what will it take to take it to the mainstream? And specifically to avoid customer satisfaction issues regarding setup and device diagnosis. So you just tackle that a bit. So who wants to take on?
Yeah, I take this on. I think, there's some really great role models in terms of how you want to approach setting up these devices. And of course, Nest really had the resources to do a lot of this stuff really, really well. And the amazing thing that, I'm curious, who's set up a Nest in this room? Raise your hand. Okay, so a few folks. The really cool thing about Nest is they get you to do a relatively complex procedure, but they walk you through it in such a simple, thoughtful manner that you don't feel threatened by it. And I think they're pushing the boundaries of how complex you can go in terms of a self-installation. But we learned a lot from that, and we respect a lot of what they did there. So I think that installation piece is part of it. But I think on the mainstream side, and what really is going to drive adoption in terms of the rest of the country outside of the Silicon Valley bubble picking this stuff up, is again the hardcore use cases of this solves a problem for me. I'm buying this product because I need to let my dog walker in, I need to let my parents in for the weekend, I need to do this, I don't want to have to pay for a locksmith, I run a small business. Those are the types of stories that we have to tell for mainstream adoption, and the product has to work really well for them. So their friends have to say, yes, this worked really well for this use case. It's not going to be, oh, this is a really cool gadget, because then we fall into the trap of what I would say being considered home automation. Home automation as an idea has been around for 30 years, and people have been trying it, but really nobody gives a damn about connecting every single thing at once, unless you're sort of a really tech-savvy, kind of nerd. But people are interested in this one product type thing, and so I think, again, it comes back to get the stories out there and make sure that people are actually using it and performing those use cases, and that's how we're going to hit mainstream adoption.
The one thing I'd say is I actually think cost points still need to come down. They're going to come down just because Qualcomm is not the only company out there building these products. So, and you guys love to compete, and the price points will just keep coming down along with Moore's law. I think that when you look around the house, you look around the building, and you're trying to figure out what's going to be connected to the internet, basically anything that's plugged into the wall is going to be connected to the internet, and that's going to happen within 10 years. And I'll give you an example. People, or a battery, but definitely plugged into the wall, because anything you plug into the wall has some level of value to it. Take a look at a lighting fixture, for example, or just a lamp. If there's nothing else that you would plug it in for, forget turning it on and off. If the lamp can tell that the light bulb is burned out, why shouldn't it go ahead and do automatic replenishment with Amazon, and you have a light bulb show up at your house the next day or 2 days later, together with your regular grocery shipment? So if those chips are free, and you can do easy configuration between BLE and Wi-Fi, there's no reason that shouldn't be built into any device that's plugged into the wall. And then you start to go to much higher value items. I think it's pretty inevitable, and I think it's coming a lot faster than we think. And what it means is, it's the cost of technology becoming close to free, and then it becomes a software problem and some wiring. So there's no reason that a high-end toaster today shouldn't ship with one of your modules or some of the Qualcomm hardware built in. It's connected directly in a solid-state way into the controls of the device, so that software can be rolled out over time, so that any smartphone can be used, so that instead of trying to figure out, top around, broil, this and that, you shouldn't get regular software updates that make the toaster better with time, the refrigerator better with time. The technology is largely there. It's really a software and UI problem at this point.
Yeah, I agree on the price point. So as the prices come down,
They're still too expensive.
well, yeah, it's always going to be too expensive until it's zero, which it's not going to get to. But it's relative to the price of the device. But actually, you haven't seen our Wi-Fi chip pricing. We're thinking of ourselves. Anyway, it gets to the price point where the manufacturer will just put the connectivity in there, so the consumer doesn't even make a choice when they go buy the product. And it's kind of Trojan horses its way to the house. And then, maybe I think the key for the consumer is a lot of them aren't asking for this stuff because they don't know what to do. So it's going to take some time for people to see, oh, my neighbor's got this cool thing that's connected, and I think I'm going to go get that as well. So that speaks to it's hard to sell activity because people don't know what to do for them. And they're not going to pay extra for something that they don't perceive the value for. But I think the price point is important because more and more devices will just come with connectivity. It won't be an option. And then, the infrastructure's there, and you can come in with the software and the rest of the ecosystem and satisfy the consumer later.
Yeah, just from our perspective on that, our module today is selling for $10 to $12. We have a new module that's just coming out. It will sell for about $5 to $7. And Moore's Law is fast at work. We expect to be in the $3 to $5 range at the end of 2015. And by the way, we do have a toaster in process and coffee makers in process. So check back with us later this year.
Okay, so I think, so we talked about pricing, and that has to come down, and as we mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the manufacturers will start to put it in, but it's the value-added services that really start to come to make it more mainstream. We talk about automatic replenishment, also automatic software update, remote diagnostics. So you call someone and say, my equipment is not working, they should be able to see what streams of data came out of it before it went offline, whether it is offline or online. So we are working with companies such as Insteon to provide these sort of software updates, provide security updates over the wire, so you don't actually have to send someone out to update the device. I think those kind of value-added services will make them more compelling, these devices much more compelling than today.
And I just want to throw in one more point about this, and it's sort of a thought exercise, is consider the Belkin Wemo, which is sold at retail for $49.99, and that means that they have to price that at roughly 30% of that cost. So Belkin is making very little money on this, but they can do that because they have the buying power and the size to do that. But that's a $49.99 product, and it's done very well, but it's not a huge, massive hit. So when we talk about price point coming down, it's well sub $100 price point for a lot of this stuff.
Now the security question. So security is an important challenge in the IoT space because in part it relates to privacy. So how are IoT manufacturers and developers addressing this challenge? Cameron, maybe?
Yeah. So I think evidently, of course, with a locking device, security is first and foremost. Brian hinted at this, that our approach towards security is multi-layered between the link layer, so whatever security is provided to us by Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, as well as our own security at the application layer. But realistically, no one in this business is going to state that their device is unhackable. And you have to have the mentality going in that you are going to be updating your security over time, and you're going to be sort of, to the extent your hardware allows, changing out protocols and so forth. But I actually think that when you really dig into it on the consumer side, the bigger concern that people have come to mind is the privacy issue. The questions that start to crop up are not whether or not I see whether or not my roommate got home or my children got home, but whether or not the government sees that. We've already gotten used to giving away a certain amount of data to corporations like Google and Facebook, but how much of that data will we give away to other corporations like Locatron, and how much data will that in turn go to the government? So I think that the privacy piece of this is really big. And the way we see it, the way that we want to implement it in the future is essentially limiting our footprint, or allowing the consumer to limit their footprint so that the amount of information that we consume and track is limited. And partly because that's not our business model. We're fundamentally about access. We're not necessarily about collecting data, about letting people in and out. I think the privacy piece should really be first and foremost, and of course security is just assumed to be thoughtful and thought out and changing.
Maybe Bagat wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to extend a bit on the privacy side, there's obviously the security, the transport level security which you can provide by doing SSL and AES encryption and fix the gap between the device and the cloud provider or the hub. But when it comes to privacy, you can limit the footprint by collecting less data. The other approach would be to actually put the user in control. Collect all the data, but let the user decide how the data is segmented and how it is distributed to different people, right? So, with PubNub, we provide, PubNub data streams and PubNub Access Manager, where you can segment the data coming out of the different devices, and then you can control which stream of data is available to which user and for how long, right? So, you may want to share some of your equipment information with your person who are repairing it or the agency, but you may not, or you want to share your load information with your family members, but not with anyone else. So you don't want to necessarily just limit what you're collecting. You want to be able to authorize and introduce and seize it at the end.
Anyone else on the security challenges? No? Okay, we addressed all the challenges, and now it's time to talk about the opportunities. So what are the best opportunities in the connected home? One second.
Well, I think as I mentioned before, I think everything that's plugged into the wall is going to be connected to the internet sooner rather than later. So I'd say really the biggest opportunity that I see for these devices, and I don't know that it's a startup opportunity necessarily, is figuring out how does the UI, how does everything work for when you want to control any of these devices that's plugged into the wall. What does that look like? What does that configuration engine look like? Whether it's your toaster, whether it's your coffee maker, whether it's your refrigerator, whether it's as silly as it might sound, the lamps in your house. I mean, these different things, that UI layer hasn't really been built out yet. But I do think 5 years from now, we're going to have a pretty clear vision of what that looks like.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about silos. I think 5 to 10 years from now, opportunities is going to be around some of the integration between the smart silos. But at least I see things like wearables and connected car and connected home sort of intersecting to some extent, and there will be opportunities to bring these closer together. Right now, I think the focus on making each of these independently work, but I think there are interesting, especially when you look at wearables and connected home. I think there's going to be quick convergence there.
I think that the really interesting opportunities are not at all in the connected devices right now, just because of the overhead of building a hardware company, but really the businesses that enable really interesting behaviors on top of those devices. I think in the same way that with personal computing, we're at the same stage with wearables and connected devices in terms of personal computing, but what really made it interesting was not the Apple II, but the fact that you could run VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet app, on the Apple II. And I think that category of software and apps that's going to be built on top of these devices is going to be absolutely massive. It's going to enable all sorts of new behaviors which we hadn't thought of, and ones of which are really just starting to get going now. So all sorts of sharing economy type stuff. You know, the most obvious types are Airbnb, but TaskRabbit, things like that. A lot of these are predicated on things like access or having other sorts of connected devices that give you information. So I think those are really going to drive adoption. I think that's really where a lot of people should be looking in terms of building apps and companies.
Yeah, so I would agree with Rob that anything that plugs into the wall is going to be connected, but I would go even further as pretty much anything that moves electrons will be connected, including things that run on batteries. And you're going to see more like RFID tags and related things, and clothing, disposable patches that people wear to monitor their heart rate, et cetera. I mean, the numbers are astounding where this could go. And, we just have to get the technology in the right price points and the right usability, but it's definitely heading in that direction. So I think 10 years from now, everybody's going to have 100 IP addresses in their home at least.
Yeah, and that speaks to a little bit of what our business model was. You know, we had thought through first, should we build a platform and start to have a lot of these value-added services on top? Or should we focus on getting as many things as broadly connected as possible, and then once we had those millions and tens of millions of connections made, then putting the services on top? So that's more of the approach we're taking. So we have, if you look at the graphic, we have there the connected home. There's 180 million US homes. There's at least 25 or 30 very good applications in the connected home. But another very interesting thought exercise is zoom out and follow yourself over the course of the day. Not only all the devices you connect within the home, but then you get in your car and you have your music system. By the way, you're driving in front of street lights, you're going in parking lots and parking garages, which are increasingly getting wired up and hooked up. You're coming into the building at work, you're going through security, you're going into restaurants, you're going into retail. So if you actually do a life cycle view of your movement across the week and how many things you interface to, people are counting 500 or more devices that each and every one of us routinely engages every week. Think of the ability to start interconnecting across domains. So you take something out of your refrigerator, and we have a company that does this, a shopping application, so you can snap a code of what you're running out of, but now that's connected up to your grocery store, and just like in the use case scenario that Rob was talking about earlier, now you start connecting, cross-connecting the connected home to the connected retailer and the connected grocery store. Or now it knows you have an appointment, you're coming into downtown San Francisco and you're going to need a parking spot, so you can reserve a parking spot in advance. The ability to start connecting across these domains when we have ubiquitous connectivity is mind-boggling, and that's part of our business plan, is to run out and get as much connected real estate as we can, and then start to build the value add across and on top.
Okay, so Brian started to talk a bit about the future. So how do you see the future of the connected home in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years?
So on that one, yeah, that's good. So to simplify, well, let me say one thing. We'll all recall, by the way, the ubiquitous internet has only been out there for 20 years, so we can't even imagine what that looks like in 30 years. But let's look at the internet connectivity in 20 years, what's that has done. We think this space is going to move twice as fast. Number one, the device count, is so much larger than the count in the digital world of what could have been connected. Number two, the infrastructure for that connectivity already exists out there. So we have the whole internet, all of the Wi-Fi connectivity and so forth going on. So we think the ability for this to move twice as fast as how fast the internet moved, and let's look at how pervasive that is in all of our lives today, only 20 years from when that started. So one way I like to look at it is, if you go into a house today and you see something that is connected, like your Nest thermostat, you go, wow, that's really interesting, that's unique, that's cool. We think when you go in your house or work or retail or any place in 10 years and you see something that's not connected, you'll go, wow, that's really weird. Now, between here and there, I don't know which things are going to get connected, the fastest, the mostest, but I do believe 10 years from now, it'll be weird to see something that's not connected. And any industry that looks at that kind of growth and penetration over 10 years is going to be one whole lot of fun to participate in.
I actually think that in 30 years, you're going to walk into a house or a space and it's not going to look that much different. And I know that may sound strange, but I mean, I think probably about, I don't know, in the 60s, people were watching Star Trek for the first time and they thought the doors go, like doors don't change, things don't change. We live in buildings that look remarkably similar to buildings we lived in 100 years ago. I think that it's actually going to be, in some ways, very transformational in terms of everybody has this little piece of glass that they carry and they relate to, and it's that smartphone. It's this big transition, and it's going to control all these things around us, but it's going to control things that are already powered in some manner. I don't really think you're going to see powered window shades everywhere, and I don't think you're going to see people sitting in robotic chairs that take them around to where they're going. I think it's actually just going to be as simple as that device that you carry or you interact with, whether it's in glasses, controls all the electronically powered things around you. But at the same time, going to get a cup of coffee or doing things that people do, there's so much that's part of the social character of being human and our social lives that'll still be here and still be part of what we're doing. So I don't think that you'll see that many outward changes.
I think a lot of the changes will be hidden. The water out of your house and lack of connectivity, that's what happens. It's not where so maybe the house probably won't look that much different, but some of the skin will be a lot different.
I think that it's definitely folly to try and predict these things way out in the future. But the most exciting thing for me is that if they work really, really well, as everyone is sort of echoed here, you won't think of them at all. And ideally, I hope to use my smartphone less in the future. And I mean that completely, because I stare at screens way too much all day long. So.
Now we are open for the question. So.
Hi, yes, thank you. Tim Hyman. The question I have is about the last mile, the last meter, and who are going to be the makers of these commodity modules that are the connectivity and the sensors that will be embedded in all of these devices. I guess Qualcomm and Electric might be doing some of that, but I don't understand who's making the actual physical modules that do the connectivity and the sensing and the
That one's really easy. We're going to have, I think, roughly 100% market share.
Okay, problem solved.
In all seriousness, I think Qualcomm, some of the usual suspects today, Qualcomm, Broadcom, and on the processor side, you're going to see a lot of ARM processors, Marvell and such. So I think it's a multi-layered problem. It's going to be some of the leading players at the silicon level with probably a couple of new folks sneaking in. It's going to be some certain other players at the connectivity protocol, network connectivity layer. There's going to be, as we are, a connection platform layer. Then there's an application layer that goes on top of that. So we're back to, it's such a huge space. If you kind of draw it out in the matrix, there's a lot of room for a lot of people, and it will be a lot of the same players, at some of the base levels today.
Thank you. Richard Brennan, houses exist for the benefit of people that live in them, and we see personal connectivity coming in two flavors, what I'll call the lifestyle personal connectivity, personal devices, and the medical instance. How do you see all of that federated?
Connected home,
the connected home, medical, and lifestyle personal sensing.
Well, I'll jump in again. We have an application doing that, and maybe this speaks to that. So one of the companies we're working with, extremely well-funded, very large group, they're going out to instrument the assisted living facilities and also some of the more intensive care facilities, as well as ultimately they'll roll this into a consumer home. So basically they passive instrument one of their living facilities. So you're used to, your mom gets up, let's say at 6:30 every morning, she goes into the bathroom at 6:45 a.m., she leaves the bathroom at 7 a.m. to go into the kitchen. If there's any interruption, a significant interruption in those routines, this system, it has an automated learning layer to it. So if there is something out of the ordinary in the schedule, then a caregiver gets an immediate notification to go call and check in. That's being added to on their roadmap equipment that will keep track of what medications they've taken and when. So that's kind of a combination of living and healthcare. And if you add into that everything to control the HVAC and the lighting, now you can think of a completely passive environment that somebody lives in that also is instrumented to track healthy living. And that's going to be shipping here in the next 12, 18 months.
Is that a gateway or the cloud?
It's all over the place. It's back to the hybrid thing. So a lot of this stuff you want to run it, very low power because it's battery over short distances. But back to you want to be able to get everything up in the cloud to run the analytics and take the holistic view and push updates down. And so that's an example of that. All of that is hybrid architecture with a combination of technologies, ultimately driving up to the cloud through our platform.
Hi. Sorry, I have a question related to security because, you didn't speak a lot about that because you mentioned only the privacy issue. Don't you believe that there is another risk which is more, I think we are here in the infancy of Internet of Things. You can have the same thing that you had on PC. Probably when PC were invented, nobody thought that there might be people to invent viruses and to make some attacks. Don't you think that there is a risk here and that we need to be protected against denial of services attacks and against probable viruses and the fact that people can try to shut down actually your whole house when it will be connected?
I think that topic is well framed because a lot of people, when they think about security, they think about privacy. And I actually don't think privacy is that big a deal in the context of the connected home, so to speak. I think that if you're worried about privacy, the things that you search for in Google, like maybe if you're sick or worried about being sick, or any number of things that are far more private than when you get up in the morning or is your house occupied or not. I think the bigger issue is on the actuator side of things. So if you think about being able to turn on an oven remotely and put it in cleaning mode and do that when you know that somebody's not home, you know that they're a long ways away. There are actually a lot of nefarious things that you can start to do on the actuation side that are an issue. I don't think I'd worry as much about whether you unlock the door or not, because ultimately you can break a window. There are many ways you can get into a house. It's really just about raising the friction. But the things that you can do that actually take action on the real world, that is where you have security challenges. And I think a lot of attention needs to be paid to that.
Yeah, I would say definitely, I think in the healthcare space too. There have been people who have demonstrated attacks on pacemakers and defibrillators by hacking the protocol, and it's just very, very scary stuff. And I think that we hold ourselves in Lockatron to be a higher regard in terms of the security of an ordinary door lock or breaking a window. We're not just targeting right above that. We're clearly trying to think through all sorts of cases. But in our case, it's denial of service is certainly a problem, but it's not as problematic as somebody in a car listening to signals for 2 weeks, being able to ferret out the keys or things like that. you have to gauge each one of these attacks on what the most concerning. And quite frankly, I think anything cloud connected, you give it a central nature, and that's really the most concerning. And it's the question is, can you, how much security can you ever guarantee at that cloud level? And my belief is the best way to approach it is have, the folks at DEF CON, hackers, white hat, gray hat, attack your stuff, have them, go in, tear it apart, and then build off of that feedback. Because you're always going to have, really innovative players outside your company thinking about this. So encourage them, bring them in, and really engage the community to have them help you out with this stuff, even if it means posting sort of monetary bounties and stuff. Because I think, we can talk all day long about protocols and approaches to this stuff, but in reality, you're going to have some really, really smart 17-year-olds hacking at something, and they find a way to your device. And you want to make sure you engage them before they go and post it on the web.
Yeah, and not to geek out on you too much, but security is a hallmark of architecture, and there are so many different vectors of attack. I've sat through tons and tons of meetings with our team around it, and again, the pedigree of our team is, they built the whole Apple iPhone deployment platform, they worked on the Nest stuff, and the way they speak about it is you have to have a security concern at every step in your architecture, because they can come in the protocol locally on the device. They can come in over the network. When you're coming across a Wi-Fi network, there are 7 or 8 points of access across the network they can come in. There's social hacking. There are literally dozens and dozens of vectors to come in and hack an IoT platform. So our platform was architected from the ground up to be secure at every level. And again, that is not a trivial thing to do. That's why we had 35 engineers working 2.5 years to do this, and some of the top security experts in the world. We've recently launched some commercial and industrial stuff with some of the most sophisticated commercial and industrial companies in the world. They sent a team in to do a complete security audit top to bottom of the design, and had a team of 100 people out of Israel trying to crack into our platform for a while. So that's the table stakes to get into platform on IoT. And if you think you're going to have 5 people in the basement and build that kind of a secure application, it's just not table stakes.
I agree, and security has to be architected at every level. And there are some standard mechanisms that we know that are working well, like secure key exchange, things like that, which you have to build it from day one. That's what we do with PubNub and many devices. Is the devices listen to instructions from our or from the cloud, and the exchange is done on the fly. So they're not baked into it, so that you won't get hacked into it and get the key. You're doing AES and encryption as the messages go through, but the keys are held on the side, so no one can just hack in between and start sending signals and then kick out actuators. That if the signal is there, I think that has to be really secure, and the data exchange is not true. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the web which we can apply on day one and but still we have to get others to test it, back test it, and things like that.
Yeah, security is a big focus. We have this concept of, that we built out of a smart gateway, which really can apply a lot of security to your whole network. And so your IoE devices, which need to be small and cheap and low power, don't have to themselves have a tremendous amount of security, especially if they're going out of the cloud. So they're secured locally, but then the smart gateway applies really strong security before anything leaves the home. And that concept's getting a lot of traction with carriers and other folks putting gateways in the homes. But you're right, security is an issue. It comes up a lot with customers who are saying, what's my liability here? I'm concerned about saying sort of the thing that Rob was mentioning, I'm a plants manufacturer, someone burns the house down with the oven. What's my liability? So, but they kind of look at it as they're looking at the other benefits and weighing the risks. Moving forward anyway.
Hi. A number of panelists have mentioned low-power Wi-Fi as being one of the platforms that's going to become, one of the interfaces that's going to become important at home. So when all the doorknobs and door locks and whatever devices around the home are connected to Wi-Fi, will that create a Wi-Fi coverage problem in the home, say for larger homes or older homes or type of thing, or how you see that evolving as it becomes dependent on the home Wi-Fi network?
I would say that's a Wi-Fi coverage opportunity.
Yeah, so a lot of consumers are already building out their Wi-Fi networks for other reasons. You know, they're getting connected TVs and Apple TV boxes, and they put the TV in some part of the house that doesn't get access to the router, so they go and they figure out how to get that access. They put in a wireless repeater or a hi-fi, you know, a PLC, Wi-Fi extender, and you know, a lot of homes are already built out for that. Now, not every home is, but you know, there are solutions to that. And it's been one of the things that we struggled with over the years with deploying new kinds of connected devices like connected TVs and game consoles and set-top boxes. But you know, that problem is being solved. If you have a provider like AT&T or Comcast or whatever, they definitely have solutions to cover your entire house. And you can also do it DIY. You can find all that stuff at Fry's.
Okay, we have two last questions, so one here.
Hi there. Kind of following up on the previous question, I was also curious where you see the different opportunities going for internet service providers and wireless carriers, and kind of what you anticipate their moves might be in this market in terms of connections inside versus outside the home, mobile device, you know, back to your home network. Kind of just color around that subject.
Well, most of them already have, you know, some home services like security, and I think you'll see them roll out other services as well. They're looking for all sorts of ways to monetize that connection and that gateway they put in your home. The smart gateway I was discussing earlier, you know, the next time you buy a AT&T or a Comcast gateway, you're probably going to get a smart gateway. And it's going to feed a lot of services that they're going to try to provide.
I think the ISPs see this space as a major growth potential, and they naturally want a piece of it. But the problem is that ISPs are really good at delivering generic content or generic pipes, and I don't really know how that's going to play out in the space because a lot of these silos, you know, Locatron, for instance. Yeah, it's really cool if we can work with a hub that they sell through their consumers. Whether or not consumers are going to bite at paying an additional $40 per month to have it through their ISP, I don't know. I think that ISPs are looking for something to replace lost cable TV revenue, and I don't think it's going to be connected devices that actually fills it in. I think they'll make something from it, but I think they're trying to insert themselves between these experiences and the consumers. And if you have a really great experience, you'll just make yourself available straight to consumers.
One quick comment on that. I'd build on this. I'd say they're very good at delivering bandwidth, or should be better at delivering bandwidth. I think it's one of these things where AT&T, people thought AT&T did a deal with the devil, but it turns out that they're doing better than ever just because of adoption of the smartphone overall. People, as it turns out, want lots of bits reliably. And I think the ISPs and the cable operators, they're going to try to deliver services here, and I'm thrilled that they're going to try, and it's likely that they're going to disappoint consumers, and they're going to build awareness at the same time, and that's just going to be great for startups in the space to come in and be able to come in and ride in on the coattails of a number of failed services in that area.
Mike had mentioned that there was a protocol up and coming that was similar to Bluetooth Low Energy, and I wasn't able to hear what that was. My question is, what was that, and are there any other protocols, standards, or link layers that are up and coming that might, you know, change the space that's, you know, you guys know about?
So that protocol is 802.11ah, and it comes out of the same IEEE committee that did 802.11. It's just targeted at IoT type devices. It has different properties than Wi-Fi, designed for small, you know, sending small packets, letting devices go to sleep for a long time, save battery. And so it's the new protocol. You'll see it start rolling out in the next 2 years probably.
Just one comment on that. I think one of the reasons that protocol as well as BLE are sort of coming up is there was a question on Wi-Fi earlier. I mean, there is Wi-Fi connectivity within the house, but what's happening with a lot of devices sometimes is Wi-Fi interference. So if you're watching Netflix and that's consuming a lot of the Wi-Fi, but then you're trying to control your home door through your Wi-Fi, that can cause interference. And that's why some of these other protocols are using a slightly different frequency, whether it's BLE or but to actually bypass that problem, right? But I think on core Wi-Fi also that problem is being solved.
Yeah, let me just clarify something though. 11H is not designed to replace BLE. BLE is going to have a huge market on its own, so they're complementary.
Okay, so that's the end of our panels. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our audience.
All right, we have 45 minutes to still hang out. I think the panelists will stay here. I know Rob, don't take too much of his time because he's got a jam. But this will be up in a couple of weeks on YouTube, and feel free to hang out. We still have lots of snacks, lots of wine, and sodas. So see you guys next month.